Welcome back to Movies Explained. Today's film is a mystery sci-fi from 2009 titled, Knowing. The film begins in Massachusetts in the year 1959. At a local elementary school, a young girl named Lucinda Embry is staring off towards the distance as she hears the sounds of whispers. The teacher named Ms. Taylor calls out for Lucinda to return to class as recess is over. The students are tasked with drawing their visions of the future, which will be placed in a time capsule. The time capsule will be buried on the school grounds as part of an annual school event. While the other children draw what one would expect, Lucinda appears to be in a trance, scribbling what appears to be a string of random numbers. She refuses to stop until Ms. Taylor has to take her paper by force. The event begins and they all gather at the schoolyard to see the time capsule being lowered, but Ms. Taylor notices that Lucinda is missing. She and the other school staff search for her until it gets dark, and Ms. Taylor eventually finds her hiding inside a storage closet. While crying, Lucinda scratches the string of numbers into the door with her bloody fingers, then begs her teacher to help her stop the whispering. 50 years later, a man named John Kessler is grilling hot dogs in front of their house for his son Caleb. As Caleb uses his telescope, John, who's an MIT professor, discusses the possibility of intelligent life in outer space. Caleb becomes upset after John says he doesn't believe in aliens and goes to his room. John's words reminded him of his mother, who had passed away. They say goodnight using sign language because Caleb's hearing is impaired. It turns out that John still hasn't gotten over his wife's death either, and drinks to cope. The following day, John teaches a class and then speaks with a colleague named Phil. John realizes that he's late for Caleb's school's annual event and rushes there just as Ms. Taylor, who is invited as a special guest, gives a speech. They are going to open the time capsule they buried 50 years ago, and each student receives a drawing from inside the capsule. Coincidentally, Caleb is handed Lucinda's letter of numbers which he reads before he sees a mysterious figure in the distance and starts to hear the same whispers as Lucinda. Later, John spots Lucinda's letter stored in Caleb's backpack and scolds him for not returning it to the school. Before tucking Caleb in, John notices him watching a video of his mother, Allison, and decides to leave his son alone. As he continues drinking again, he notices some of the numbers on Lucinda's letter. He thinks that it's a code and tries to decipher it on his whiteboard. He thinks that it might be the date to the 9/11 Twin Towers attack, and an internet search reveals that 2996 is the number of deaths from the incident. This leads John to try finding more number groups that correlates chronologically with the dates and casualties of major disasters around the world. However, between the number groups there are numbers that he can't figure out yet. When John tries to tell Phil about his discovery, he is laughed at. He decides to investigate by visiting Ms. Taylor to ask about Lucinda and the letter. Ms. Taylor tells him about the day Lucinda wrote the letter and informs him that she died a while ago. John returns home to investigate the letter some more, while Caleb plays in the yard. As Caleb begins to hear the whispers again, a car approaches and one of the mysterious figures hands him a black stone. When John notices this, he rushes outside, but they've already left. Later, when his worried sister Grace comes to visit him, John gets into an argument. He spends the night worrying about the next catastrophic event because the last 3 dates specified in the letter have not yet passed. John watches the news to look for any bad signs and sees a news about solar flares disrupting satellite networks. Staying up late causes John to be late to pick Caleb up from school. He gets stuck in a bad traffic jam, where he notices that the coordinate numbers on his GPS is familiar to him. He checks the letter and deciphers that the numbers he hasn't figured out are the coordinates for each disaster's location. He realizes that the coordinates for today's presumed disaster are right where he is, so he gets out of his car to investigate. Soon after, a plane suddenly crashes onto the road and towards an empty field before blowing up. John returns home to a worried Grace who was babysitting Caleb. The news reports that the plane crash was caused by a navigation system malfunction due to electromagnetic radiation. Caleb wants to know why John has been preventing him from watching TV and playing at his friend's house. He's also noticed that his father has been behaving weird. Later, after hearing that John was involved in the crash, Phil arrives and has begun to believe that the numbers are accurately predicting these disasters. He advises John to avoid the predicted disaster sites, but John believes he is obligated to investigate further. One of the mysterious men awakens Caleb at midnight and urges him to look out the window. Caleb has a vision of a forest fire that consumes numerous animals, causing him to scream. John rushes to his side and comforts him before noticing the man standing outside the house. Once again, the man vanishes when John tries to confront him. The following day, John tracks down Lucinda's daughter, Diana, and takes Caleb to the museum to meet her. John tries to tell her about Lucinda's letter and why he needs her help to warn people of the incoming disaster that will kill 170 people in New York tomorrow, and 33 more on October 19th. However, Diana says that she can't help him and leaves with her daughter, Abby. Back home, John sees a possible terrorist attack alert on TV in New York. He checks the letter for the coordinates and leaves an anonymous tip for the FBI, urging them to blockade the area the following day. The following day, he drives alone to New York and becomes frustrated when he discovers that the area surrounding the coordinates is still not quarantined. The police end up chasing him out of suspicion, but John instead chases another guy who is suspiciously carrying a large bag throughout the subway station. They continue the chase on the train until the police catches John to arrest him. It turns out that the suspicious guy was only hiding stolen DVDs, but then the real catastrophe happens as an electrical malfunction changes the train track, causing it to crash into a parked train in another station. John survives the accident and is now sure that the predictions are all true, and that this accident was also caused by an electromagnetic radiation. When John arrives home, Diana and Abby are waiting for him outside. Diana reveals that she wants to help John because Lucinda always told her that October 19th is the day Diana will die. They head towards Lucinda's old trailer in the woods for more clues and leave the kids to sleep in the car while they go inside to investigate. Diana looks at Lucinda's letter and notes that the number 33 for the last prediction might actually be the letters EE written backwards since Lucinda used to write that way. In the trailer, they discover many newspaper clippings of disasters and a drawing of Judgment Day with a shiny object in the center. John also finds a lot of the same black stones that were given to Caleb, and the words, "everyone else," written under Lucinda's bed and realizes what the letters EE mean. Taking note of what Diana said earlier, John realizes that the final disaster will kill everyone, as in the Judgment Day. The kids in the car panic as the mysterious men surround them, prompting Caleb to honk the horn. Their parents dash outside, but the men are already gone. While Abby claims to hear the men whispering, John draws his gun and pursues them. He notices one standing in a clearing away from him, but when John confronts him, the man turns around and emits a bright light from inside his mouth. While John is blinded, the man flees, and John returns home with the others. They believe the strange men have been following their children for some time. The following morning, Abby presents John with the sun-added drawing of Judgment Day. They go to John's lab and meet Phil there because John believes the disaster is related to the sun. They discuss the solar flare model they created, and Phil claims that if it occurs, the entire planet will be destroyed. John is devastated and suggests for Phil to spend the time he has left with his wife. After John informs Diana of the solar flare, they prepare to hide in a remote cave in the hopes of surviving. John tries to warn his family about the flare by calling his father, but the phone dies in the middle of the call, indicating that the solar flare has started. While preparing, John realizes that the numbers for today's disaster has no coordinates. He remembers that Lucinda had scratched the door during the school event, so he takes a detour to the school and leaves the others to find the door. He finds that the door has been painted over, so he frantically takes it off the hinges and scrapes the paint to reveal the coordinates. When he returns outside, Diana and the kids are already gone, on their way to the cave. John then inputs the coordinates in his GPS, which shows that it's right where Lucinda's trailer is. He rushes to the trailer while trying to call Diana to tell her to head to the trailer instead. Diana stops at a gas station when the crowds are starting to panic. Caleb calls John to inform him about where they are, but a mysterious man kidnaps Caleb and drives away in Diana's car with the kids. Diana panics and steals a car to pursue the man, but unfortunately, she gets hit by a truck at an intersection. Meanwhile, John arrives at the gas station where the clerk explains what had happened. He continues driving until he reaches the scene of Diana's accident, approaching the ambulance where they are attempting to save her life. The paramedics announce her time of death to be just past midnight of October 19th, exactly like Lucinda said. Despite his shock, John drives to the trailer, where he notices tire tracks leading into the woods. He follows them into a clearing where the ground is covered with the familiar black stones. Caleb and Abby appear and look to be perfectly fine. Abby claims that the men informed her that Diana is in a safe place, while Caleb asserts that the men will take them to a safe place. The four mysterious men stands before John as an alien craft emerges from behind the clouds. Apparently, the men are extraterrestrials who are there to save the family from the solar flare. The craft descends, and the kids prepare to board it, but John realizes that the extraterrestrials are only interested in taking the children. Caleb doesn't want to be separated with his father, but John assures him that he will always be in Caleb's heart, together with Allison. Before leaving, the extraterrestrials reveal their true form, and it appears that more similar spacecrafts are also leaving Earth. They are saving humanity's children from the inevitable disaster. John falls unconscious while in tears, and when he wakes up, the sky is now glowing orange from the flare. He drives through the crumbling city to his parents' house, where Grace greets him with a hug. He assures her that Caleb is in a safe place, and the family embraces tightly as the flare envelopes the entire Earth, completely destroying it. The film ends with Caleb and Abby being dropped off by the spaceship to a lush planet far from Earth, before it takes off again into space. As more kids are dropped off, they make their way to a large glowing tree in the distance. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more videos.